Bishaan darbuuf deemu sinyaatini nunyaatini yafiraa. Guyyaa darbuuf deemu findarbini ofee gnadaraa. Bishaan darbuuf deemu sinyaatini nunyaatini yafiraa. Guyyaa darbuuf deemu findarbini ofee gnadaraa. Failalu hundumtu gattene namumma kalesa une lafa keenye waliin nama maate dachee gaarii faalo araara siin jenna yaa waakkana jaalo araara siin jenna yaa waakkana jaalo. Isaanis jedhee of dhaquu furmaatan ta'u. Isheenis jedhee hundumtuu walaadhaan ta'u. Isaanis jedhee of dhaquu furmaatan ta'u. Isheenis jedhee hundumtuu walaadhaan ta'u. Isaanis jedhee hundumtuu walaadhaan ta'u. Bishaan darbuuf deemu sinyaatini nunyaatini yafiraa. Guyyaa darbuuf deemu findarbini ofee gnadaraa. Bishaan darbuuf deemu sinyaatini nunyaatini yafiraa. Guyyaa darbuuf deemu findarbini ofee gnadaraa. Namnu namaan kennine nama kennauma waan qabnutu beekanne waan namni qabnu mama biyyaaf nagaa ta'u addunyaa fayyaawina of eegnee wal eegganne uumaa keenya kadhanna uumaa keenya kadhanna nagaa ta'u fayyaawina nagaa ta'u uumaa keenya kadhanna.
Good evening, everybody. Today, I have special guest, Dr. Truman, the director of OSG. He is a man of ethics and evidence-based man. He has documented countless atrocities against humanity in the East Africa, especially against Oromo people. Dr. Trevor, first of all, I wish you all the best and good health in 2023. And I have very glad to have you here on the Dutch Media Diagnostical stage of discussion. Welcome.
Thank you very much indeed, Baro. It's a great pleasure, as always, to be on Oromo Media, and I can only be grateful for this opportunity to express some of what is going on over there in Oromo, and thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you. Dr. Trevor, today our discussion will be free and fair because the Oromo people freedom struggle embraces the free world code of conduct, respect and fulfill the UN declaration and the value of the humanity and human rights. Now, in order to have a very clear structural discussion, I will let you show our main agenda, and we will start to summarize shortly. Please let's show the first page of our main discussion. Dr. Trevor, our main discussion, number one, ongoing genocide in Oromia, namely command post, drone attack, military force, beheading, skinning, burning alive. And the second one, the mind of Ethiopian empire. And third one, dominant factor of primitive and modern man. And the third one is awareness of international community and UNESCO about those evil forces regarding ongoing genocide in Oromia and Tigray and other nations in East Africa. International assistance is necessary for Oromo people to fight and eradicate those evil and human forces. So in order to have a good and effective discussion, for wasting our time, let me enter to page 2 and I will show you the first question from that image. Dr. Trevor, in order to give you a very short picture here about ongoing genocide in Oromia, if you have seen the first picture, the beheading of Wallaga Oromo and dancing and singing on them in the 21st century. And when you see the Oromo people are going from psychological genocide of torture to physical disappearance. And the second one is the rich man born in Amara area, and he called himself is an Amara person, is preaching cannibalistic and hate speech to cook and eat human being. Especially he spoke that on regarding the Tigray people, and now he's preaching on Oromo people. And the down one is the religious leader even declaring genocide on Oromo people and blessing the fighter. And the one with Minilik photo and president of Oromia, Mr. Shmallis Abdisa, if you see this man, you are going to understand what I mean, a psychological genocide about Oromo. This man is to be a president of Oromia, to protect the Oromian citizens. Not only Oromo, the Oromian citizens who live in Oromia. But this man is the first man in human life and in the world to bless and to carry the criminal man and the genocidal man called Minilik. And that is how the Ethiopian empire leaders humiliate Oromo people. They call it Oromian president, and they force him to carry the killer photo. Again, they force him to declare a drone attack on Oromo and Oromian citizens and kill the Oromo people and burning them as a barbecue of a bread of McDonald's. And it is really, you can imagine your prime minister, Mr. Rishi Sunak, imagine he can order drone attack on Cambridge. He can drone attack on Bristol, on Bradford, on Liverpool, on Glasgow, on Manchester. How you are going to imagine? Imagine the Chancellor of Germany declare a drone attack, aerial bombardment, a military attack, raping on a Berlin, on München, on Hamburg and Frankfurt. Again, it's not ending. And the man known has to be their intellectual man. Sorry for my word. You know, in the West, they say certified dogs who are not able to. And this man called Mr. Andergacho, a UK citizen, declaring a barbarism on Tigray people, and also forced to change the Oromo language alphabet, the Oromo language vocabulary, and to stop the Kube, the Oromo language written in Kube. So I don't know where I have to tell you. Mr. Rene Fort also criticized the silence of the Ethiopian Empire about the ongoing genocide on Oromo, on Tigray, on Kumant, on Sidama, everywhere, especially about the ongoing genocide in Oromo, especially nowadays, in Wallaga Oromo, in Wollo Oromo, in Shawa Oromo, in Borana and Guji Oromo. So my question is, we are living in West where human beings be respected regardless of their identity, their ethnic background, their religious. Everybody is living side by side by respecting each other and by moderating the solidarity for each other and value and promote human rights and humanity. Please, I will ask you to say here over your idea, your suggestion, what you like, Mr. Trevor. Dr. Trevor, sorry.
That's all right, Baro. I can call you Baro, you can call me Trevor. Is that okay?
Okay.
Both medical doctors. Thank you very much. As you probably know, although I have a reputation because of running the Oromo Support Group since 1994, I'm not a human rights expert. I'm not trained in human rights. I just rely on common sense and humanity in my reporting. And there are some things that we just know are wrong, killing and torturing people and raping people. The use of the word genocide, I was always, until recently, very hesitant to use that word. I've written the word genocide 20 odd years ago in various papers, wondering whether what was happening to the Oromo under the TPLF was in fact genocide. In some respects, you could say it was, because the attempt is to destroy in whole or in part a group of people. And certainly the TPLF were responsible for that. But what is the danger is, as we've seen with the Amhara Association of America, which uses the word genocide almost on a weekly basis, saying that this incident is genocide against the Amhara people, usually blaming Ola or some Oromo of some sort. And the effect of that is to weaken the word itself. I belonged for a number of years to the International Association of Genocide Scholars, and I went to 3 biennial conferences of that association because I wanted to talk about what was happening to the Oromo and put it in perspective globally. And one man said there, if everything is genocide, then nothing is genocide, and the value of the word is lost. It loses its meaning. And I was always worried that by using the word genocide, it would put people off. And indeed, it still does. When people hear the word genocide, they automatically assume that people are exaggerating. And I presume this happened at the beginnings of the Srebrenica killings in Yugoslavia. I presume this happened at the beginning of the awful killings in Rwanda. Initially, people were reluctant to use the word, but once the facts were established, then there was no doubt on those occasions that that's exactly what it was. And I believe we will say exactly the same thing about what's been happening in Tigray and what's been happening in Oromo over the last few years. Indeed, the onslaught in Oromo began in late 2018. It wasn't a recent thing like the war in Tigray, which began in November 2020, as you well know. But what has been happening this year in Oromo is as bad as what has been going on in Tigray. We know from meetings with Alex Duval and Ezekiel Gabissa in recent months that the population of Tigray has been reduced by 1/6. They've lost 1 million of their population. And that is due to direct fighting and due to Abiy's use of famine as a weapon of war. And what is happening in Oromo now is, as I say, just as bad. We're having federal forces committing gross abuses against Oromo civilians under the guise of drying out the ocean to kill the fish. In other words, reducing the support base of the Oromo Liberation Army. But the people that are being killed in these drone strikes and also in military offensives are not Oromo Liberation Army fighters. The people who are being killed are Oromo people, ordinary Oromo citizens who are just in the wrong place at the wrong time. I can give you several examples of people being rounded up after fighting with the Oromo Liberation Army, local in the area, West Shoa, Wallaga, East Wallaga, Horoguduru, people being rounded up purely on the basis of their speaking Afan Oromo. This happened in Warajarso, for example, in West Shoa. It happened in Gambella City after that attack last year when Benishangul Gumuz, when Gambella forces and the Oromo Liberation Army attacked an ammunition dump around Gambella City. And what happened afterwards was that people were rounded up purely on the basis of their ethnicity. If you spoke a local language in Gambella, if you spoke Amharic, you were spared. If you spoke Afan Oromo, and that was your language of choice, then you were rounded up, your hands were tied behind you, and you were shot dead on the street. And this has happened in numerous places in Shoa, as I said before. What earmarks the current atrocities is the degree of barbarism, the medieval nature to these atrocious goings on. As you showed in that illustration, with people dancing with heads on poles, dancing around bodies of corpses being burnt on the street, and taking selfies just to show your friends how you've been involved with the grossest of human rights abuses. A lot of us have been really quite traumatized by it's a form of post-traumatic stress disorder, with the visual images that we're bombarded with of people being skinned alive, people being burnt alive, people having their heads cut off. I've actually been sent videos of somebody in an amateurish way trying to sever somebody else's head. These are horrific things which no British person, no person in the world should be expected to see, or even to know occurred. These are bestial. This is less than human, this behavior. And to have people celebrating it and chanting and being proud of it is really very offensive to humanity as a whole. I cannot understand the mindset of people that do this. I grossly underestimated the hatred with which Amhara people held Oromo people. During the years of the EPRDF, the TPLF, I knew that there was animosity. I knew there was hatred, and some of this was ill-founded and built on prejudice and racism. But I had no idea that intelligent political leaders like Andargachu Tsige and religious leaders, as the one you illustrated, I had no idea that these capable individuals held such vicious beliefs that really belonged to the Stone Age. This sort of belief in violence to that degree, and the depravity with which these people are behaving against the Oromo. As you say, it's amazing that a government which is intended to protect its citizens, this is what governments are all about, is to provide security for the citizens of that country. But the major cause of death in Oromia now is the government and forces from Amhara region that are calling its tune, that are playing to its tune with these episodes of genocide and ethnic cleansing that are happening all around the borders of Amhara region. I was mystified. I campaigned for the release of Andargachu Tsige with his wife in London with Amnesty, and we met regularly with other peoples from Ethiopia, trying to expose the human rights abuses of the EPRDF. If you remember, he was captured in Yemen. Yes. And put in prison. And I campaigned for that man's release. Since then, his wife has left him, I understand, and she will not entertain even talking to me because she's, oh, ethnic politics and blah, blah. Nobody wants ethnic politics. Well, you're absolutely right. Nobody wants ethnic politics. But this is the fact on the ground now. People are being killed because they are Oromo. So they have to resist as Oromo people. You say, can I imagine a UK Prime Minister launching drone attacks on Manchester and Birmingham and other places? And of course, that is very, very difficult for me to imagine. And I assumed it would have been just as hard to imagine that in Ethiopia 5 years ago. But obviously, it's not. This is the reality on the ground. But UK politicians and US politicians are nonetheless complicit in the human rights abuses going on in Ethiopia. They're complicit by their silence and by their support to Abiy Ahmed. Ever since he came to power, in fact, he came to power because he was supported by the American government. Former ambassador Yamamoto was a great proponent of Abiy Ahmed. Abiy Ahmed has had prayer meetings with senators in the USA, where he's been blessed as the God-divined leader of Ethiopia. But much more significant than that, they're getting military support, logistical support, and all sorts of benefits by it's not as good as it was, but they're still being supported by the US government. The initial reactions to all these atrocities are of absolute disgust and disbelief, and it's very difficult for me to get past that reaction. It's almost impossible to have a logical response to it, because the atrocities are felt at such a visceral level. I have seen videos of people's heads being dragged along the ground for years, and this is nothing completely new, but the scale of the current atrocities is it's debilitating. It almost paralyzes you into inactivity and disbelief. And this is one of the greatest barriers we have to get over, of course, because politicians in the West are very reluctant to see what is going on. And if they're shown horrific videos, they say, well, we don't know that it's Oromo victims. We don't know if it's done by Amhara, blah, blah, blah. And the refusal to accept the magnitude of these horrors is in one way understandable, because they're very difficult to accept that human beings would do this to each other. But we have to get over this barrier. We have to show people what is happening. We've done very poorly in terms of publicizing what's going on. And I'm just as much to blame as anybody else. We all should have been working far harder than we have been in terms of telling the world what is happening to the Oromo. Okay, people will say, well, yes, 30 years ago, nobody had heard of the Oromo. And to a large extent, that is true. But having a language and an area called Oromia, it is all very well. Having education up to junior school level in Afan Oromo is all very well. But if hundreds of thousands of your people are being tortured to death and killed in most brutal fashions, it's very difficult to believe that we are having an effect. So I appear on your program exasperated and frustrated and depressed. We must give the information, we must provide the information to people who will make decisions to help the Oromo people. We've got to persuade the powers in the European Union and in the USA that what they're doing is investing in instability, and this will affect the whole of the Horn of Africa. As people have been telling me for decades now, there will be no stability in Ethiopia without human rights for the Oromo people. And there will be no stability in the whole of the Horn of Africa without human rights for the Oromo people within Ethiopia. Only then can we spread a sort of stability throughout the Horn and get rid of these hideous people like Isaias Afwerki and Abiy Ahmed, who really belong to the Middle Ages or before. Sorry, Baro, I've
No, thank you very much, really, Dr. Trevor. Yes, thank you very much. I agree with you about the declaration of the word of genocide and scholarly. I agree with you. But when we see the barbaric and the horrific act of these atrocities, and when the world sees such kind of Stone Age accents in the 21st century, when they are dancing around the beheading, skinning, burning the pregnant woman, this is really awful. Thank you very much. I will pass to the second dia and let you show two. Now, this is a diagnostical stage. Our discussion is more on to penetrate the mind of this Ethiopian empire leader. Please, could you show the dia 3? Yes, the dia 3, the number 3. Let us see, Dr. Trevor, in order to penetrate the Ethiopian empire leaders, what is their mind? What kind? For example, during the Dergi era, they sacrifice millions of Oromos and other southern nations on the conflict of Eritrean and Ethiopian problems and war for more than 17 years. And now they become the puppet of Eritrea itself. During that time, they say, never, Eritrea is never is going to be a country. We have to die until one person and one guy. Now, today, if you see their intellectuals, their fighters, their writers, all their artists are leak back about their slogan on Eritrea. And now they say Aswa port and Asabu port was belonged to Ethiopia. Never today they leak back that slogan. Again, they portrayed Mr. or President Isaias during that era as a devil man in Amara politics and consciousness. Third one, Isaias was once refused to speak Amharic language, and that was a cardinal sin on Amara consciousness. Now they try to justify that sin, really that is a laughable. Again, they call him nowadays, they slick back all those slogans and they call him a messiah. He has completely broken them militarily, politically, and psychologically. Second, Dr. Awal Allo translates the Daniel Kibret slogan, the advisor of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, declare total eradication of Tigrayan people. That is really a grave human rights violation, and it is really a barbaric and a Stone Age way of thinking. Now, famous American actor Morgan Freeman say, still seeing the truth, still seeing the right and believing the lies. And President John F. Kennedy, he say, you cannot negotiate with the people who says, what is mine is mine, and what is yours is unnegotiable, of negotiable. You know, today they say, we, Amara regions, Amara area, Amara cities is belong to Amara, but there is no, Wallaga is belong to Oromo, Harar is belong to Oromo, Tigray is belong to Oromo, Addis Ababa is belong, no, Addis Ababa is belong to Amara, Harar is belong to Amara, Wallaga is belong to Amara. Everybody is theirs. It is impossible what kind of brain and mind they have. It's unspeakable. And again, this criminal man called Mnilik, maybe it is their hero. He sold out Eritrea and North Tigray to Italia for 30,000 Kalashnikov. Now my question to you is, the mastermind of and my financial supporters of those evil forces are living in UK, your neighbors maybe, in USA, all Europe, how we are going to inform the Western government that they have to protect their nation and citizens from such kind of monsters? And the second, how we are going to sanction them? And the second one, how do you define such kind of mindsets? And third is, leave alone living together with such kind of atrocities, of such kind of attitude of mind, but it is impossible to have them as a neighbor. Maybe if you can say something on this, then we will pass to the next one, Dr. Trevor.
Okay, thank you very much, Baro. Some comments. Yes, it is indeed sadly and tragically ironic that the very people who were sacrificed in this useless war against Eritrea between 1998 and 2000, and although people talk about 60,000 people being killed in that conflict, it's easily more than 120,000. The majority of those that were killed were Oromo conscripts and conscripts from the Southern Nationalities Peoples region. And this so-called cooperation with Eritrea that's now become evident, because my enemy is your enemy, basically. They were in cahoots just to wipe out Tigray. And there's another irony, that Abiy Ahmed was given the Nobel Peace Prize because he went to Eritrea and planned the destruction of Tigray with Isaias Afwerki. He wasn't planning a peace, he was planning a war. And this is a very unstable situation. Isaias Afwerki has not changed his spots. He's still a pariah, and Eritrea is still a pariah state, and it's still one of the states with the worst human rights records on the planet. Now, the Amharas may have temporarily forgotten that, but the memories of people in the European Union and the USA are not quite so short. I disagree. I don't think that Isaias has broken the Amhara people. I believe they are cooperating because it is convenient for them both. And it is good that the Amhara movement and Abiy Ahmed are bracketed with the pariah state of Eritrea, because that is where they belong. They're in the same division. And history will confirm this, and it won't be as long as you think. And the JFK quote, I didn't know that. What's mine is mine and what's yours is negotiable, is I think that's a very good quote. And that is very typical of the northern Abyssinian, if you like, mindset. The zero-sum politics that they've never evolved out of that in the old Abyssinia. If you remember the conflict that brought Menelik to power and then enabled him to expand the empire of Abyssinia, that was always a zero-sum one. There has never been any question of absorbing people into the structure of ruling a country. It's been a question of subjugation and ruling by violence and oppression. And this is the Abyssinian way. This is Stone Age, and it will die out. We will evolve past this. But at the moment, we are stuck with this medieval mindset that they have. It is only a question of time before the West, slow as it is to realize what's going on, and inconvenient as it is to admit the truth to itself, the West will realize what is happening, just as 1930s fascist groups in the States and in Europe eventually turned against Hitler. And for the same reason, people realize that they're backing the wrong horse here. If you remember, before the war in Tigray, when they were tub thumping the Amharas and Fanos about getting rid of or fighting these Oromo, the initial lines in the sand that were drawn by Amhara extremists. I'm thinking of one particular American who was very vocal in recruiting for Fano and the Amhara regional militia. And he was interviewed and said, Makonnen Kebede, I think his name was, he said, if you're wanting to break up Ethiopia and have a separate Oromia, if you want, in other words, if you want Oromia not to be under the jurisdiction of their Amhara overlords, then you have to get out. And we will remove Oromo from Wolaga and Shoa and Finfine, and the Oromo will be left with the areas that remain, whereas the West and Shoa will become part of the Amhara kingdom, which is what they obviously are pushing for. If we look at the pattern of ethnic cleansing around Amhara region, you'll see that that prophecy is exactly what is coming to fruition. We're getting episodes of ethnic cleansing right the way across, from Metikel, Kimachi zones in Benishangul Gumuz region, in Horogudru, East Wolaga, and then in West Shoa, North Shoa, East Shoa, and within Amhara region in Wollo. All these areas we're seeing ethnic cleansing, where Oromo people are being uprooted and kicked out, basically. And this is following exactly what we were told the Amharas wanted to happen 2-3 years ago by this nasty fellow when he was interviewed on YouTube. You're absolutely right in saying that one of the points at which we should be making inroads and fighting back is where these Amhara groups are getting their funding from. It's Amhara organizations in the USA and in Europe which are supporting these people. It is Amhara doctors, Amhara professionals who are funding these genocidaires in Ethiopia. They are responsible just as much as the people with the machetes for cutting off heads and skinning people and burning them alive. And this should be brought home to them, as well as to the people living in the countries in which they're allowed to reside. That sort of behavior should be punished. We talk about asylum seekers in Europe as though they're some sort of vermin. And we're very keen to, with the way the racist politics of the European Union and Britain, especially now we've left, is such that asylum seekers are almost considered as people without rights. And as you know, in Britain, we've toyed with the idea of sending some of these individuals to Rwanda, for God's sake. Now, if we started treating the criminals who fund these barbaric acts of ethnic cleansing and genocide in Ethiopia If we start expelling those people back to Ethiopia or to Rwanda, then we might have some effect. We should be campaigning. These people who are paying for the genocide against the Oromo people should be punished. And this is, I think that's a very good point of yours. That is a pressure point at which we can propose, support, and encourage sanctions against these people. Now, finally, you were talking about the impossibility of living together with Amharas as next door neighbors. And we have Amhara people living within Oromia now who must be sympathetic to the Oromo people, who must have Oromo friends. And we cannot afford to encourage this racist dichotomy between peoples. We must resist the temptation to be as racist as the Amharas are against us. If we go down that road, and if we start behaving in any way like the Amhara Region Militia, like Fano, then there will be no hope at all for the whole of the Horn of Africa, because we're seeing genocide now. But if we see fighting that's even as tenth as barbaric in the other direction, with 45 or more million Oromo mobilized, then the thought is just unbearable. One of my greatest fears is that we might see some sort of resorting to violence, which could be unstoppable if that reaches a horrific boiling point, which we hope it will not. The alternatives are to extend a hand to reasonable people, whatever nationality they are, whatever ethnicity they are. After all, it's ideas. This is a fight for human rights. It's not a fight for one person against another because they're Amhara, because they're Oromo. This is a fight for everybody's respect for human rights in the whole region. Only then can we hope to have any semblance of peace and stability and progress. And it's so tragic to see the decades of investment in infrastructure and in people and institutions in Ethiopia all going to rot now, and just literally like rotting bodies in a field, with the whole of Ethiopia is in danger of imploding. And if only the West could see that. Our responsibility is to point a torch at what's going on so that people can see. Yes, as I said before, we haven't done enough and we must do more. And instead of talking to ourselves like this on Oromo Media, we ought to be shouting from the hilltops and getting into Western media, that English-speaking media that will respond to our pleas for help, really, and recognition. Back over to you, Baro.
Thank you very much, Dr. Trevor. It's very good points what you have said already. Zero-sum game of politics of the Northern Abyssinia. And also, the West will realize what is going on, and they are going to also understand whom they are backing them, the wrong one. The third one, you say the oxygen perfuser has to be punished and should be punished. I agree. And we have to keep our value, ethics, and humanity. We have to avoid to be like them, like Fano, barbarians. That is a very good point. I agree with it. And also, We have to be shout from the hilltop for our rights, for human rights, for human value, for humanity, for ethical, for good conduct of code of conduct of humanity. My grandfather, my father have done nothing for Europe, but I became here. I became a medical doctor. I am serving the European citizens. I have learned their language, and I am helping myself and my family. But in Ethiopian empire, we Oromos lost our country, our language, our tradition, our culture, our rights to exist as an Oromo. It is equivalent to 40 to 50 million people. Oromo nation was discriminated, abandoned, become politically discriminated. It is horrific and heartbreaking, but we have to fight back. Please go to the third one, and then I will add at the end the last one. Please go to the third one, Mr. Fraul. Dr. Trevor, here I would like to call it how we are going to differentiate the primitiveness and modern man. And then we try to assess the place of Amara Fanos and also the supporters from the diaspora, the doctors, professors. They call themselves, they are teaching in the university. They are watching the Western style humanity, but they are acting like animal, like a primitive. Their mindset is still in the Stone Age. On the left side, if you see the primitive, like Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon, where we long ago before evolving the human nation. And then in comparing that, you are seeing on the right side, like the space station, where the Russians, Americans build a station on the space. The world is moving from the Neanderthal and the Cro-Magnon to the space center. But the Ethiopian empire is dancing still in the Stone Age, beheading the Oromo because of the identity, skinning the Oromo because of the identity, burning the pregnant woman because of their identity, burning alive. Their religious leaders are preaching that. Their rich person is preaching that. And when if you see down, the man called himself Yilma, and now he has spoken on his young age in America, like the Amara is not belong to the Africa. We are white. We became black because of the sun. And now this man become a big man. He is a minister. He is representative of Ethiopia in Africa Union. And still his mind is on Stone Age, on his young age. This is unbelievable. Again, they, like you have said, we have to have the value of ethical code of conduct, humanity, value of human being. They have lived in Oromia more than 30 to 40 years. They are not able to speak Afan Oromo. They have lived in Sidama more than 30 to 40 years. They are not able to Sidama. They have lived in Somalia, in Walaita, in Benishangul, in Kimant, in Agao. They have never speak any language. Again, they are going to insult the people, the original indigenous people, and they are obstructing to speak their own language. This is the primitiveness. When I came to the modern man, I told you that we have discovered the space station. The world is evolving to the another planet, another idea. And again, Mr. Barack Obama say, education is not only getting a certificate. Education means changing the humanity, changing the human value, changing the attitude of value that you are going to contribute in the society, in to change the value of primitiveness to the modern man, building a space station, building a good clinic, building a good education center, building a good road, investing on the modernizing and promoting the lifestyle of the people. And Mr. Professor Lubumba, he say, when you are corrupt, in Japan, the corrupted person kill himself. In China, they will kill you. In Africa, you become, you are preparing yourself for election for president. Exactly what is going on nowadays. For 30 years since let me forget 1 century and a half long, for 30 years, the killers of the Oromo under the EPRDF, inclusive the current Prime Minister Abiy, killing thousands of Oromos, imprisoning thousands of Oromos. And they become now the president as the Prime Minister of Ethiopia. The Opidio man, the shameless man, become the one who is declaring a wage war against Oromo by drone attack, by aerial bombardment, becomes the president. That is exactly what Professor Lubumba says. It is shameful. So for me, I don't know what word I can say. At the end, President Uhuru is an African, the former Kenyan president, he said, the money can change and speaks more than a value, a human, a moral value, what the people can have. Today, the OLF leaders and OLA leaders are keeping their value to fight back for their people. Maybe I am going to ask you to say something. I don't know what areas. If you are call them those people, you are uncivilized, barbaric, primitive. They say, no, we have a 3,000 years history, but they never made any nail, single nail. And if we have say, if we tolerate them and respect them, they call us naive because we are a tolerant. Oromo people is a tolerant, a kind, generous people, but they call us a naive. Can you say here, Dr. Trevor Truman, something? Sorry to make it long.
Thank you, Baro. Neanderthal man has been misrepresented. I think he was a lot more intelligent than we give him credit for.
Yes,
and
you are right.
For those humans outside of Africa, a percentage of all our genes, in fact, are Neanderthal. It's only people who've not moved out of Africa that have not got any Neanderthal genes in them. It's all superficial. This veneer of civilization that we have, we've seen it time and time again, as I mentioned before, Rwanda and what's happening in Ethiopia now. This isn't the way intelligent living beings should behave. And in fact, it's not difficult to come to that conclusion in terms of the whole of humanity, if you look at our response to climate change. For the peoples of the world, we have the combined intelligence and ability to reverse climate change. All it needs is a common will and the desire not to be selfish, the need to recognize the need to cooperate. That's all it needs. And we've got fantastic examples of international cooperation and national cooperation. Just look at the way that airlines run. Look at the way roads are driven on. We have millions of people driving millions of tons of metal at huge speeds, very close to each other. But we do it skillfully and without causing many deaths. We can cooperate. But what do we do in terms of climate change? The whole of the planet is heading towards a cliff edge with its foot still firmly on the accelerator. Now, how intelligent is that? That is not intelligent. And so to have a false impression of how intelligent we are as a species, yes, we can look at the moonshot, we can look at the space stations and see what we can do. And now we can harness energy by nuclear fusion, it seems, but we do not cooperate. And any progress that has been very uneven, and it has been at the expense of one person compared to another. Now, if humanity does not evolve out of this mindset, then we are doomed on the planet, and rightly so. If we cannot survive together, supporting each other and cooperating, then we do not deserve a place on this planet. And the sooner we are got rid of to allow more intelligent and more cooperative species to come along, the sooner we got rid of, the better. If, however, we can come to our senses and start cooperating and using the intelligence that we've been given, then we can reverse this process. It's literally not rocket science. It's easy. It's just a question of wanting to do it and wanting to overcome our selfishness in order to allow each other to cooperate and do this together. And what is happening in Ethiopia is just the pinnacle of this stupidity that human beings are capable of. We have this sort of what do they call it? Dissonance, where we refuse to acknowledge what is really happening before our eyes, and we carry on blindly as though we're doing the right stuff, and we're not. But okay, we need to do one thing at a time, and one of the first things we should do is to stop killing each other like we're doing in Ethiopia. And the West could play a huge role in this. The West could play a pivotal role in this, in terms of encouraging us and the Amhara to work together to forge a future for Ethiopia in the Horn, either together or separately, but one in which we do not commit genocide against each other. This is, as we've said many times in this program, this is Stone Age. It's at best medieval, and we owe it to the rest of the planet, to the future, to cooperate, but we're not. So that's the end of my gospel according to Dr. Trevor.
No, it's very nice. I agree with you. The Neanderthals were in the early of 20th century. The European researchers portrayed them as an primitive, foolish, and cruel. But at the end, they are realized that the Neanderthals are clever. I agree with you. Now, I am going to pass to our last one to say it. Let me show 1, 5, and then pass to the 6, the 5th one, and pass to the last one, please. This one, just to have an idea, Dr. Trevor. The recent Swedish scientist Svante Pabo has won this year Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine for Research Human Evolution. The central theme of the 2022 Nobel Prize is an attempt to redefine modern man. And they come to conclusion DNA can be a bridge to true social relationships if we have an awareness of the common sources of our origin, then a sense of unity will arise among our societies. That is what you have said, cooperating each other. And my way is maybe have this one question and then I will pass. Maybe it is possible to test why those Abyssinians become the troublemakers in that empire in East Africa, and why Oromos and other thousands nations like Sidama, like Walaita, Somalia, Benishangul, Agau, Kemant become always the dual victims. Why? Maybe it will give us a solution. This invention of physiology of medicine, and have this question. And please pass to the 6th one and the last one, and to get you as a last one. Here is my last question, Dr. Trevor. There is one quotation that there will be a time when moving forward hurts, moving backward hurts, and standing still is deadly. Here is where we are in now. If we say we are almost in 2018, let us forget the past one and give it a place for the history. And let us define the current situation and let us plan our future life for the coming generation, for all nations. The OLFs agree on it, the OLAOs agree on it, the OFCs agree on it, everybody's agree on it. Now, they totally mess it up in these 4 years, and they are now preparing the great nation and the big nation like Oromo in East Africa and other nations like Benishangul, Sidama, Walaita, Somali, Kemant, Agau, preparing for horrific and barbaric and a very awful genocidal phase. Now my question is here, to generalize with my first statement. Normally there is a determinant factor of the pillar of national powerful national power. That means diplomacy, information, military, economy. Now my question is, OLF with the support of OFC proposed a phenomenal path to eternal peace. That is, maybe you know it also, that is and was forming Oromia transitional government. This proposition is the core and backbone of eternal peace in the empire itself and in East Africa, like you have mentioned. However, this proposition falls in the wrong ear. Like you have said before, there is no peace without justice for Oromo people and other nations in East Africa. And Martin Luther King say also, peace is not only the absence of war, but the presence of justice.
I like that.
So my question is here, we have discussed already to try to bring them to the justice, especially in the diaspora, those pampers, those criminals in the America or in Western country who are funding the terrorist group FANO. We have discussed. We are also already said is working together as a people, as a nation, as an individual to have a good way out, that the innocent regular people, despite their ethnic original, where they come from, to live side by side in peace, equality, happiness, and freedom. So how we are going to have support this oil way of peace to pass for the eternal peace, how we are going to force the diplomatic approach, how we are going to the political support, how we are going to mobilize the financial support, and eventually also to support the OLA. OLA is at this moment the only force to protect the Oromo nations from those barbaric, ruthless, wild, and primitive Ethiopian empire killing machine and FANO. In this regard, awareness of international community is crucial, and how we are going to have this powerful national power to get on the side of Oromo people and on the side of Oromo political organizations, especially OLF, OFC, and OLA. Thank you very much, Dr. Trevor.
Thank you, Baro. You started talking a little worryingly about genetics and DNA, and this smacks of the eugenic movement of the early part of the 20th century. And our problems are not genetic, they're cultural. And I believe if you took DNA samples from a lot of people in Ethiopia, you wouldn't be able to tell where they're from, where we're so mixed up genetically. But the problem is that we are responsive to manipulation by people in power. We are told what to think by political leaders, and most big movements have been a question of manipulation of the population by charismatic leaders, and this is where we get the zero-sum business from. I agree, standing still is deadly, but we should not go down the wrong road and assume that the problems are in any way structural and immovable. We have, over the last few years, with the war in Tigray and now with the cessation of hostilities agreement, we have the opportunity to push for the sort of dialogue that might prepare the way for a future stable and prosperous Horn of Africa, indeed for the whole of the continent. And that is to sort the problems out from the grassroots upwards, instead of having this top-heavy respect for power, which ultimately results in violence. Basically, we see a good example of this in Ethiopia, obviously. One of the hardest jobs we have is persuading the people who might influence this process, the European power brokers and the Americans, persuading them, who are addicted to top-heavy power establishments, to persuade them that addiction is unhealthy. And this smacks of socialism, which does not attract support from America. But that is the way forward. We have to start getting solutions from grassroots people. Oromo, Amhara, Benishangul Gumuz, Walaita, Sidama, Somali, everyone should be involved in the decision-making process. And it's messy, it's difficult, it's a lot easier to impose a solution from above. But if you start at the grassroots, you can develop a society which will prosper. Now, this sounds heretical, I think, to most Western politicians, but this is the direction we have to go in if we're going to save the planet from climate change, and it's the direction we have to go in if we're going to get any sort of stability in Africa, especially in the Horn of Africa. So you're right, as the OLF has said ever since it was founded in the 1970s, there are three pillars on which it's built. There's military, political, and diplomatic. And yes, we have to work in all those spheres. And at the moment, we need a fighting force, otherwise we will be destroyed. But we need diplomatic and political work as well. As I say, most people will regard my ideas as somewhat heretical, but if we just veer towards getting more grassroots participation in decision making, then we will make a big difference in terms of the stability of whatever is set up. And it won't be that difficult. And it's hard, yes, but we can get ordinary people to make decisions on their local situation, which feed up to eventually to a national dialogue. And this is what I think we should be pushing for. Yep, I think that's me done.
Thank you very much, Dr. Trevor, to have you here. I agree with you. We will come back on another time. The problem is not genetically, you say culturally. Yes, I agree with you. If you are taking human DNA, maybe the difference is a very little. Doesn't matter wherever it is. It's a very minor issue. But when you can say, dare to say sometimes, why those people are act like that without any cultural difference? If you take some farmers from Oromo and one farmers from Sidama, Walaita, Benishangul, somewhere, and some farmers from those toxic areas, totally their attitude is different. It can be forced culturally. Yes, I agree. It can be forced education. It can be forced by many historical view. And I agree with you. And we will come another time. And the other one, what you have said, is persuading the power breakers in Europe and America. We have to work on it. I am very grateful to have you here, and the Oromo people is grateful to you. And thank you very much. I hope we will get soon each other to discuss more. And thank you very much, Dr. Trevor.
As always, it's a pleasure, and thank you very much for this opportunity to express my opinions. I realize that, especially towards the latter part of the program, my ideas may be a little strange to some people, but I think we've got to go in that direction. We've got to start shifting power from the people at the top to the people at the bottom. And only that way will we end up with a more stable Horn of Africa. Thank you very much.